behind America's greatest fortunes lies a shocking secret. The first black millionaires built empires that would make today's billionaires jealous. Oprah, Jay-Z, and LeBron James. These are the names which likely come to the mind when you think of black wealth. But centuries before these modern moguls made their first million, a hidden class of African-American elites had already built extraordinary empires that dominated entire cities and industries. Picture this: while most of America believed black people could never accumulate real wealth, there were already black families living in mansions that rivaled those of the Astors and Vanderbilts. They owned banks that financed entire communities, controlled industries that shaped the American economy, and built generational dynasties that lasted decades. Brutal oppression and systemic exclusion. When slavery was legal and segregation was the law of the land, these visionary entrepreneurs somehow managed to create generational wealth through real estate empires, groundbreaking financial innovations, and revolutionary industrial enterprises. Today, we uncover the untold history of America's original black elite, the forgotten millionaires whose legacies shaped a nation. Our journey begins in 1766 Philadelphia, in a small house where a baby was born who would become the foundation of black wealth in America. James Forten entered the world as a free man, something extremely rare for black people at that time, but being born free didn't guarantee success, prosperity, or even safety. It just gave him a fighting chance in a world designed to destroy him. At 14 years old, while most kids were playing games and learning trades, Forten was already proving his character on the brutal battlefields of the American Revolution. This wasn't some romantic adventure, this was life-and-death warfare where teenage boys routinely died horrible deaths. He enlisted to serve on the warship Royal Louis, fighting for a country that barely recognized his humanity and certainly didn't guarantee him the freedoms he was literally bleeding to secure. When British forces captured Forten's ship and threw him onto one of their notorious floating prison ships, he faced conditions that broke grown men. These prison ships were death traps, where thousands of American prisoners died from disease, starvation, and abuse. But even in this hellish situation, Forten demonstrated the character that would define his entire life. The British offered him something incredibly comfortable: life in England, complete freedom from the racial oppression he faced in America, and opportunities he could never access in the newly formed United States. But here's what separated Forten from everyone else. He refused. Without hesitation, he chose to remain a prisoner of war rather than abandon the country he believed in. This wasn't just patriotism, this was a calculated bet on America's future and his own ability to succeed within it. This decision would define not just his life, but his family's legacy for generations to come. When the war ended and Forten finally returned to Philadelphia, he didn't waste time feeling sorry for himself or dwelling on the trauma he'd experienced. Instead, he immediately got an apprenticeship in the only industry he knew: shipbuilding. He went to work in Robert Bridges' sail loft, where the massive canvas sails that powered global trade were meticulously crafted by skilled artisans. But Forten wasn't content to just follow orders and collect a paycheck like everyone else. His brilliant mind was constantly working, always improving, always innovating, always looking for ways to do things better. He spent his days studying how sails caught wind, analyzing how ships moved through water, and researching what made some vessels significantly faster and more maneuverable than others. Then he did something that changed everything. He invented a completely new type of sail that gave ships superior speed and control in various weather conditions. This wasn't just a small improvement or minor modification. This was revolutionary maritime technology that every ship captain in Philadelphia wanted. His innovation became so popular that ships using his sails gained competitive advantages in both speed and cargo capacity, making them more profitable for merchants and ship owners. When his boss Robert Bridges decided to retire in 1798, Forten saw his golden opportunity and made the bold decision to buy the entire business. This required enormous financial risk and business acumen, but Forten was ready. He immediately transformed the operation into one of Philadelphia's most successful and innovative companies, implementing new production methods and expanding the client base. But here's what made Forten truly special and revolutionary for his time in a world where segregation was not just accepted but legally enforced. His workshop operated on completely different principles. He made the radical decision to hire both black and white craftsmen, creating an integrated workforce that proved talent, skill, and innovation had no color. This wasn't just progressive thinking, it was brilliant business strategy that allowed him to recruit the best workers regardless of race. By the early 1800s, James Forten wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the richest men in all of Philadelphia, with a fortune estimated at $100,000. To put that astronomical sum in perspective, that's equivalent to several $1,000,000 today, making him wealthier than most modern millionaires when adjusted for inflation and purchasing power. But money was never Forten's end goal, it was his weapon in a much larger war. He understood that wealth meant power, and power could be used to change society. He poured his fortune into the abolitionist movement with strategic precision, funding newspapers that spread anti-slavery messages throughout the country and backing organizations that fought tirelessly for freedom and equality. The famous American Anti-Slavery Society, one of the most important organizations in American history, was actually organized right in his home on Lombard Street. His house became something far more significant than a wealthy man's residence. It served as a crucial station on the Underground Railroad, providing safe haven, food, shelter, and resources for those escaping the horrors of slavery. Family didn't raise pampered socialites who spent their time at parties and social events. They raised soldiers in the war for equality. His sons took over the family business and continued the activism with the same passion and dedication. His daughters married into other prominent abolitionist families, strategically creating a multi-generational dynasty of activism that would influence American politics for decades. His granddaughter Charlotte Forten Grimke became a famous poet and teacher who documented her experiences teaching newly freed slaves after the Civil War, leaving invaluable historical records. When James Forten died in 1842, his funeral was one of the largest Philadelphia had ever witnessed. Both black and white citizens came to pay their respects to a man who had proved that early black wealth was inseparable from the fight for black liberation. From the abolitionist north, we travel south to Memphis, Tennessee, where we encounter Robert Reed Chursa, man whose story proves that sometimes the greatest fortunes come from the most devastating and traumatic circumstances. Born in 1839 to an enslaved mother and a white steamboat captain, Church learned the fundamentals of business by carefully watching the bustling trade along the mighty Mississippi River, absorbing lessons about commerce, negotiation, and opportunity after gaining his freedom during the chaos and upheaval of the Civil War. Church moved to Memphis in 1865 with big dreams but virtually no money or connections. He started incredibly small, opening a modest saloon here, running a simple restaurant there, but his natural business acumen and tireless work ethic quickly made him successful. Unfortunately, his growing prosperity made him a target for the racial hatred that was exploding throughout the post-war South. During the horrifying Memphis riot of 1866, one of the worst acts of racial violence in American history, a white mob specifically targeted Church's businesses because they represented black success and independence. They attacked his saloon with brutal violence, shot him multiple times, stole all his money and valuable possessions, and left him bleeding on the ground, completely confident he would die from his wounds. But Robert Church didn't die. Against all odds, he survived the assassination attempt, and in an act of incredible defiance that would define his entire life, he made a promise that stunned everyone who knew him. He would stay in Memphis and build his empire in the very city that had tried to murder him. Most rational people would have fled after such devastating trauma, but Church saw something others couldn't see. He understood that Memphis was perfectly positioned to become a major commercial center, and he was willing to bet his life on that vision. Church's greatest opportunity came through unimaginable tragedy. In the 1870s, yellow fever epidemics swept through Memphis like wildfire, killing people by the thousands and creating a living nightmare. Those who could escape fled the city in absolute terror, abandoning their homes, businesses, and entire lives. The city's economy completely collapsed. Businesses closed permanently, and property values plummeted to almost nothing, as Memphis essentially became a ghost town, while everyone else saw only death, destruction, and hopelessness. Robert Church saw the opportunity of a lifetime. He made the calculated decision to stay in the plague-ravaged city while everyone else was running for their lives. He began systematically buying land, lots and lots of it, commercial buildings, empty residential lots, abandoned warehouses, entire city blocks. He bought them all for literally pennies on the dollar from desperate sellers who just wanted to escape. This wasn't just bold, it was geniusly bold strategic thinking. Church understood that cities recover from disasters, that people eventually return, and that prime real estate in strategic locations would eventually become incredibly valuable again. When the epidemics finally ended and people began cautiously returning to Memphis, they found a transformed city where Robert Reed Church owned massive pieces of the most valuable real estate in town. His calculated gamble had paid off spectacularly. By the early 1900s, Church's real estate empire was generating over $6,000 per month in rent alone, an absolutely astronomical sum for that era that made him wealthier than most white businessmen in the South. His total wealth was estimated at over $1 million, officially making him the South's first black millionaire and one of the wealthiest men of any race. But Church understood that money without purpose was meaningless, and wealth without community impact was just personal indulgence. Since black citizens were completely banned from public parks, recreational facilities, and cultural venues in segregated Memphis, he made the revolutionary decision to build his own. In 1899, he purchased a huge piece of prime real estate on the famous Beale Street and created Richest Park and Auditorium, a magnificent complex that became far more than just a recreational space. This wasn't just a park, it was a cultural revolution and a symbol of Black independence. The facility featured a massive, state-of-the-art auditorium that became the heartbeat of Black culture and politics throughout the entire South. The venue hosted an incredible range of events, from performances by President Teddy Roosevelt to concerts by the earliest and most influential blues musicians who would go on to shape American music forever. In 1906, Church founded the Solvent Savings Bank and Trust Company, Memphis's first Black-owned financial institution. This was revolutionary because it gave Black families and business owners access to loans, mortgages, and financial services they could never get from white institutions that routinely discriminated against them. The Church family legacy continued powerfully for generations, with his daughter Mary Church Terrell becoming a national icon, co-founder of the NAACP and one of the most influential civil rights activists in American history. While Church was building his empire in Memphis, another man was making history on Wall Street, the most exclusive, ruthless, and unforgiving financial battlefield in the world. Jeremiah Hamilton was completely unlike any Black entrepreneur we've discussed so far, where others focused on serving their communities and building local institutions. Hamilton charged straight into the white-dominated world of high finance with a level of ruthlessness and financial genius that terrified even the most experienced Wall Street operators. Hamilton's story begins mysteriously in Haiti in 1828, where historical records show he was running a sophisticated counterfeit coin operation that required incredible skill, connections, and nerves of steel. When authorities discovered his elaborate scheme, they immediately put a death sentence on his head, forcing him to flee the country. Hamilton barely escaped back to New York with his life. But instead of laying low and trying to blend into society, he immediately jumped headfirst into the chaotic world of 1830s. American finance. This was the high-stakes world Jeremiah Hamilton was absolutely made for, an era with virtually no financial regulations, where massive fortunes were made and lost through wild speculation, corporate manipulation, and financial warfare. The financial markets were like the Wild West, where only the smartest, most ruthless, and most innovative operators could survive and prosper. Hamilton's signature strategy was both brilliant and ruthlessly effective. He would buy up stock in companies that had been completely wiped out by natural disasters, economic crashes, or other catastrophic events, purchasing these worthless shares for practically nothing. Then he would launch sophisticated legal warfare against insurance companies, forcing them to pay out full value for the destroyed assets. When the Great Fire of New York destroyed countless businesses in 1835, creating one of the worst economic disasters in American history, Hamilton was immediately there like a financial vulture. While others mourned the destruction, he was buying up supposedly worthless stock and transforming it into pure gold through brilliant legal maneuvering and insurance manipulation. He became so successful, aggressive, and feared that he ended up in direct competition with Cornelius Vanderbilt himself, one of the most powerful and ruthless tycoons of the entire Gilded Age. Their legendary rivalry became the stuff of Wall Street legend, with both men using every trick, strategy, and dirty tactic they could devise to destroy each other financially. Hamilton's personal life was just as defiant and provocative as his business practices. In an era when interracial marriage was not just socially unacceptable but often illegal, he married a white woman and flaunted their relationship publicly. He bought a magnificent mansion in New Jersey and lived like royalty, hosting elaborate parties and social events that shocked polite society. Most ironically, he owned significant stock in railroad companies that legally wouldn't even allow him to ride in their passenger cars due to segregation laws. The financial press, dripping with both racism and grudging respect for his incredible talent, called him the Black Shark and the Prince of Darkness, names that acknowledged his fearsome reputation, while reinforcing racial stereotypes. When Hamilton died in 1875, he left behind a massive fortune of $2 million, equivalent to over $50 million today, officially making him the richest Black man in America at the time. Unlike other Black entrepreneurs who focused on community building and social progress, Hamilton's legacy was one of pure financial conquest and individual achievement. He proved beyond any doubt that a Black man with nothing but raw intelligence, unbreakable determination, and absolute audacity could dominate America's most predatory business arena and force Wall Street's elite to acknowledge his power. Just across the river in Brooklyn, while Hamilton was conquering Wall Street, Elizabeth Gloucester was quietly building a real estate empire that would make her the wealthiest Black woman in America and one of the most successful property investors of her era, regardless of race or gender. Born free in Virginia in 1817, Elizabeth married Reverend James Gloucester, a prominent minister and community leader. Before moving to New York, where her extraordinary business genius truly emerged and flourished, she initially started with small retail stores, learning the fundamentals of business operations, customer service, and profit management. But she quickly discovered her true calling in real estate, specifically the boarding house industry that was experiencing explosive demand in the rapidly growing metropolis. Brooklyn and New York were experiencing unprecedented population growth as immigrants poured in from Europe and Americans migrated from rural areas seeking economic opportunities. This created enormous demand for temporary and permanent housing, and Gloucester recognized this trend before most other investors. Gloucester didn't just run one or two properties like most small-scale landlords at her peak. She managed an incredibly sophisticated portfolio of more than a dozen boarding houses strategically located throughout Brooklyn. Her properties ranged from modest accommodations for working-class tenants to upscale establishments that catered primarily to wealthy white clientele who appreciated her attention to detail and superior service. This was her absolute genius. Understood market segmentation, knew how to manage properties efficiently and profitably, and executed her business plan with remarkable precision and consistency. She studied her tenants' needs, maintained her properties meticulously, and built a reputation for reliability that allowed her to charge premium rents. When Elizabeth Gloucester died in 1883, newspapers throughout New York estimated her estate at between $200,000 and $500,000, though her lawyer claimed the actual value was significantly higher. Regardless of the exact figure, her multi-million-dollar fortune in today's money made her one of the most important and successful real estate moguls of her era period. But just like the Fortens and Churches, the Gloucesters understood that wealth came with moral obligations. Their money was inextricably tied to the cause of abolition and social justice. Their elegant home and prestigious church served as command centers for anti-slavery activities throughout Brooklyn, and they were a crucial, strategically important stop on the Underground Railroad when the famous abolitionist John Brown was planning his historic raid on Harper's Ferry, one of the most important events. Leading up to the Civil War, he stayed at the Gloucester home for extended periods. The Gloucesters didn't just provide him with shelter, they provided substantial funding for his mission, understanding that their wealth could help change the course of American history. Elizabeth Gloucester was the ultimate double threat, a brilliant businesswoman who built a massive real estate empire from scratch through pure skill and determination, and simultaneously a dedicated freedom fighter who used her profits to bankroll the struggle for human rights and social justice. Moving into the 20th century, we encounter two extraordinary women who revolutionized not just their own lives, but fundamentally transformed the economic prospects of tens of thousands of other black women throughout America and the Caribbean. They would not only become millionaires themselves, but also create an entirely new industry that gave countless other black women a legitimate path to financial independence and entrepreneurial success. The story really begins with Annie Malone, a true pioneer and scientific innovator who often gets overshadowed by her more famous student but deserves recognition as one of the most important entrepreneurs in American history. Born in 1869 in rural Illinois, Malone possessed a natural gift for chemistry and an intuitive understanding of hair care that would revolutionize an entire industry. In the early 1900s, when most hair care products for black women contained harsh, damaging chemicals that often caused hair loss, scalp burns, and other serious problems, Malone developed a revolutionary line of hair care products called P. Her formulations were based on scientific principles and used gentler, more effective ingredients that actually improved hair health rather than destroying it, since she couldn't sell through traditional retail channels. As a black woman in Jim Crow America, Malone became a marketing genius out of necessity. She and her carefully trained assistants went door-to-door throughout black communities, giving free demonstrations to win over skeptical customers who had been burned by inferior products. This personal approach built trust and allowed her to educate consumers about proper hair care techniques. In 1902, she made the strategic decision to move her rapidly growing business to St. Louis, where it absolutely exploded in growth and profitability. The city's location made it perfect for distributing products throughout the South and Midwest, and Malone capitalized on this geographic advantage brilliantly. By the end of World War I, Malone was a multimillionaire with some conservative estimates, putting her peak fortune at $14 million, equivalent to hundreds of millions of dollars today, making her one of the wealthiest self-made women in American history. In 1918, she built the magnificent Poro College in St. Louis, a massive complex that served simultaneously as a state-of-the-art factory, comprehensive training center, and vibrant community hub. This institution was absolutely trained an estimated 75,000 Poro agents worldwide, giving black women throughout America, the Caribbean, and even parts of Africa a legitimate path to financial independence that was simply unprecedented in human history. Sarah Bree, who would become internationally famous as Madame C.J. Walker, started her career as one of Malone's Poro agents. before launching her own competing hair care company in Denver in 1906, while the rivalry between these two brilliant women became legendary and sometimes bitter. What Walker accomplished was taking the direct sales model she learned from Malone and scaling it to levels nobody had ever imagined possible. Walker was a marketing and branding genius who understood the power of personal presentation and aspirational messaging. She traveled constantly and tirelessly across the country and throughout the Caribbean, promoting her Walker system and training an ever-expanding army of Walker agents who became her representatives in communities everywhere. These agents were much more than traditional employees. They were independent entrepreneurs, building their own businesses, creating their own customer bases, and generating their own wealth. Walker wasn't just selling hair products. She was selling a complete vision of economic freedom, personal empowerment, and social mobility to Black women who had been systematically excluded from traditional economic opportunities. Walker's success was absolutely extraordinary by any measure. By the time she died in 1919, she was universally celebrated as the first self-made female millionaire in American history. She became famous not just for her wealth, but for displaying it proudly as a powerful symbol of what was possible for Black women in America. She built the stunning Villa Luaro in New York, a magnificent mansion located deliberately near the estates of the Rockefellers and other white industrial titans. This wasn't just showing off, it was making a bold political statement that Black wealth belonged among America's most powerful dynasties and that racial barriers could be overcome through talent, determination, and business excellence. Together, Malone and Walker created an entire industry that provided economic opportunities for hundreds of thousands of people and established a model of business and philanthropy that continues to inspire entrepreneurs today. We've journeyed from Philadelphia's revolutionary docks to San Francisco's Gold Rush Hills, from the ashes of Tulsa to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., from the mansions of Memphis to the exclusive salons of St. Louis. We've seen how these incredible families and visionary communities built empires that would make today's billionaires genuinely envious. But that brings us to the biggest, most important question. Where's all that old money now? The hard, painful truth is that for most of these incredible dynasties, the vast fortunes are completely gone, wiped out by forces that were often beyond their control. The same systemic racism and violent opposition that made their initial success so remarkable and inspiring are precisely the same forces that made preserving and passing down that wealth nearly impossible. Unlike white dynasties like the Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, or Astors, Black families with old money had absolutely no systemic support, legal protection, or institutional backing. Instead, they faced constant, relentless, generational attacks from racial violence, discriminatory laws, predatory legal battles, and systematic economic exclusion that was designed specifically to destroy Black wealth accumulation. The legacy continues. The wealth builders endure, and their stories demand to be told, because understanding their triumphs and tragedies is essential to understanding America itself.